Y'all, I never thought I would see myself paying $5.99 to watch Nancy Grace, but this case has got me invested. So Nancy Grace has been doing her own investigation into the Daybell Vallow case, the whole saga. She's been interviewing people and kind of doing things in her own little Nancy Grace style, which tends to be a bit overly dramatic, though I've been accused of the same. So today I want to talk about the aspects of the series that stuck out at me and make some commentary on it. So here we go! So she talked to Joe Scott, who is a death investigator and forensic expert. Now, one question I thought was interesting that she asked is, she's like, do you think that Nancy's ever going to wake up and like realize the horror of what she's been involved in and what she's done and all this type of stuff? And he's like, I don't think she has the depth of humanity to really ever do that. And I was like, amen, brother. Somebody put a star next to his name on the roll call, because don't we just see that with this whole crowd here? You know, just this lack of so many things, but especially the sense of humanity to understand, you know, what has gone on here is wrong on many levels. Now, then she asked him, you know, his thoughts on, you know, how the children were found, how the remains were discovered, the state of them, so on and so forth. And he said a few thought-provoking things that I want to go over. Now, in regards to Tylee, he talked about, you know, the state of her remains, which we know at this point was dismembered and burned. And, you know, he said that the way that they had to discover these is, you know, it's very meticulous. You know, you're kind of doing this grid digging, and he describes that, and he describes how this in essence kind of tells you what took place with the disposal. And he also talks about how much planning was involved. When you look at a disposal situation of someone's remains like this, you know, this wasn't just like a quick, oh gosh, let's, you know, throw them out the car type thing on the side of the road. You know, he said they had to use tools, they had to use supplies, you know, a fair amount of obviously energy was put into it. You know, and he said that whoever did this, you know, obviously Chad, Alex, Lori, whoever was all involved in it, you know, again, there was a lot of energy put into the actual, you know, destroying, to be quite frank, of Tylee's body. Now, when he's talking about the utilization of fire to destroy the remains, Nancy interrupts him. And this is one thing that Nancy does that I don't particularly like. And she will interrupt guests, talk over them, and even someone like this who is not like going against what she's saying, she'll utilize something they say to try and make a point. And it's very transparent to me, and it's like, yeah, I get it, we feel that way, Nancy, but don't interrupt your guest, it's rude. But she interrupts him, and she's like, you don't have to do any of this. They didn't have to render them down with fire. And, you know, she acts disgusted, which, hey, we all are, we get that. But it's like, girl, he wasn't sitting here saying that it was a good idea. You asked him a question, and he was answering it. And he talks about how the remains of Tylee and JJ were so different, how the bodies were treated different. And he thinks that that speaks to how they were probably perceived in life. He talks about the care and effort that went into disposing of JJ. You know, there was multiple layers of things he was buried beneath. His body was wrapped in plastic. His head was wrapped in plastic. You know, there was almost like this more of a preservation, a burial type thing of JJ as opposed to Tylee, who they literally just tried to destroy her body, erase her from this earth. And that is a very interesting point. Why is that? Now, he also speaks to some of the forensics, which, I mean, we're all hoping, like, yes, this could be a key to tying people in. You know, and he said, look, great, these plastic bags and all this stuff is there. Maybe we can get latent prints off of it. And then Nancy speaking to the aspect of, like, look, we can trace garbage bags down to, you know, the store they came from. Wouldn't it be awesome if we could trace those bags back to ones that came from Lori's house? Now, in another interview, Nancy talks to the attorney who represented Charles Vallow in the divorce case, Taylor Larson. Larson is just very honest. He's like, look, Vallow's death was no accident and it was no self-defense. Period. And he even goes over the whole aspect of, look, when I was talking to Charles, he straight up told me, if anything happens to me, it was Lori and her brother Alex. Y'all, we've heard this countless times from other sources. Now, Larson talks about the other times that Lori had threatened Vallow on the phone and saying things like, you know, I have an angel here waiting to dispose of you if you come here. And isn't it interesting that that's essentially what took place? I think we can all read between the lines and assume that Alex is that angel. Now, Larson stands by the fact that he says, says, look, Vallow says he never cheated on Lori. He was willing to take a polygraph. He adamantly denied this. And, you know, I mean, I don't know these people personally or anything like that. I just, the little bit that I've seen, I have no doubt of that. And we'll hear in a little bit another side of the coin when April is interviewed and she's saying what Lori was saying about the affair that Charles was having. Now, in regards to what Larson had to say for what Charles said about Lori having the children, you know, he said that Charles was like, look, she's mentally unstable. She can't make sound decisions for these kids. And I'm like, yeah, that much is clear. It's really sad to see how much Charles Vallow called out what was happening, how much Charles Vallow went to the proper authorities and was like, look, y'all, this ain't right, this is bad, danger, 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 and nothing was done, and the ball was dropped over and over and over and over. Now, Larson also cites a phone conversation between Lori and Chad where Lori says, look, you can take the kids, they're just in my way, I'm on a mission that it's like different from that. You know, I'm on like a different path now, and the kids like aren't really there, you know, and so that's the MO we see with all of these people. I mean, really, if you want to see the truth coming from Lori, it's in these things we're hearing of this, you know, just trying to completely erase her past and walk away from it, you know, to play Mary, Mother, and Joseph. Now, when Nancy asked Larson, why do you think Lori wanted Chad dead? He says, there was a million reasons, and it's called life insurance. As much as these people are all on this spiritual journey, they can't involve anyone in their past, they sure are really big on wanting to get the money. I'm sure it's to finance whatever sick thing it is they were trying to accomplish. Nancy also talks to Rich Robinson. Now, this is the private investigator that was hired by Larry and Kay Woodcock, as well as Brandon Boudreaux. He talks about his meeting Brandon and, you know, hearing about the whole sordid tale of the cult, the assassination attempt from Alex, you know, how he was trying to find Melanie, and how at their last meetup to exchange kids, you know, Melanie never showed up. So again, all you see these patterns with everyone involved in this, walking away from their lives, assassination attempts, ones that actually go through. All I have to say is thank God she never showed up for the last handoff with the kids, because honestly, you know, I don't think the kids would be here. That is my opinion. Now, Rich also talks about his dealings with Melanie Gibb and how he felt like she was lying at first. You know, she had this selective memory, and he really felt like she was trying to cover up for Lori and Chad and all these other people. And I mean, I think we can kind of see through the evidence that tends to be what it is. Yes, she's come out now and it's like, you know, kind of spilling tea on all this stuff, but with her, there always seemed to be this vibe of like, yeah, I think it's a day late, dollar short. Now, he also talks about doing his little stakeout where he was watching Melanie and Alex load all the, you know, stuff up in the U-Haul, and how they put all the kids' stuff by the curb with a sign that said free. And again, it's just, I mean, it's so bizarre. And what's even more bizarre is that they don't understand how bizarre their behavior is. You know, because when all this stuff is going on and they're just, oh, nope, we're doing this mission and we're, you know, walking away from our life, you know, why would that be weird? That's not odd. And again, it speaks to how they're still in this mindset. Now, the private investigator does say that, yeah, it appears that Ian Pulowski was a part of this cult. Or was, whatever. I think from the interviews we can start to see, yeah, something's not all right there. He went from wearing a wire for the FBI to basically going along with whatever Melanie's saying. Shocker! Nancy also talks to Rick Ross, who is the founder of a cult education institute. And, you know, he essentially is just kind of breaking some things down. He's like, look, you know, they're part of this larger network of people that's like mostly going to the LDS church and recruiting people. And then Lori and Chad seem to be like another division within that division of, you know, where Chad is the prophet and Lori's basically his biggest fan. I mean, y'all, have we not heard of this before? And he talks about the detachment that we see in her and like the smiling and the hello, are you not aware of what's going on? And this is just standard run-of-the-mill, I have drank the Kool-Aid type, you know, behavior. Now, yeah. Go on, put a damn seatbelt on. Yeah, I hope you've got one on your sofa, because we're getting ready to get into the big mamma jamma of the whole thing. We're going to talk about the Julie Rowe one. I don't know what to say. Okay. And honestly, here's where some of my perception of Nancy changed. You know, She didn't know what to say either. Okay, y'all, she bit her tongue so many times during this interview. I was like, oh my God, for once, Nancy is like, I'm not going to say a word. I'm not going to say a word. So let's talk about it. So y'all, we all know this is a former friend of Chad Daybell's. Chad published several of Julie's books, and during this process, she allegedly became friends with Chad and Tammy Daybell. So almost like right off the rip, they start talking about these visions that Chad had and whatnot related to Tammy. And Julie's, up there and she's like talking about how Chad came to her and was like, look, I've had these visions, that Tammy's going to be dying in a car wreck. And that basically she's going to be going to the other side of the veil. Now, Rose says that it was also kind of convenient that Chad, did have like a $300-something life insurance policy on Tammy. Again, y'all, these patterns are just like right in your face like a damn cross-stitch pattern. I mean, it's just a trail of breadcrumbs. Now, Rose says that she warned Chad about Lori because of her visions she was having. And, Ro explains that she's a visionary and what that means. So she can see people when they're texting and talking or having phone conversations. And I was like, okay. And Ro's basically like, look, I told him that I saw what he was doing with Lori and talking about and all this. And I wasn't happy about it, okay? I wasn't having it. And I'm just like, girl, did you really just get his passwords? Because I kind of think you would do that. Allegedly. Well, this is where Nancy, y'all, she damn near had to just go. Because you could see where she was just like, oh, God. I felt like Nancy the whole time was like, I'm not going to really say what I'm thinking because this is good TV and I want her to come back on because I know people will watch. Now, Ro talks about a time in September 2018 where Chad was basically like, look, I don't want you to come visit because Tammy is dealing with like some serious amounts of jealousy. I can't imagine why. Then Ro is basically like, I didn't tell Tammy because I didn't want to get involved in their marriage. And I'm just like, hold on. Just stop. You don't want to get involved in their marriage, but yet you're contacting Chad and telling him that you're having these visions of this correspondence. You know what he's talking to Lori about, and you're not agreeing with that. So I'm like, this isn't, these pieces aren't adding up. And at this part, 100% Nancy is dead silent because she is screaming inside. Now, Ro does say, look, the last time I saw Tammy and Chad together, they were affectionate. They seemed like everything was fine. Now, Nancy always asks some pretty obvious questions. She's like, okay, so Chad's predicted her death like so many times. Did Tammy have any idea about this? And Ro's like, no. Again, y'all, I'm sorry. If somebody starts coming to me talking about their partner, their spouse, whatever, oh, they're going to die in a car wreck. They're going to do this. I had this vision. I had that vision. I honestly, on the DL, would probably reach out to them and be like, hey, not for nothing, but, I just want to let you know this. So-and-so has been telling me there's like several ways you're supposed to die. Is this a thing at your household? If it is, I'll butt out. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Now, Rose starts talking about another situation with some woman in Arizona who Chad was, having an emotional affair with, and how he was doing the whole, oh, we've been married in past lives and all this type of stuff. And Nancy's just like, why did you have a problem with him, talking to other women like this? Which is an obvious question because, again, I think with Ro and some of these people, their answers don't add up. Like, they're saying one thing, like, this is my motivation, and then their actions are completely different from that. And usually to get out of these difficult questions, there's this squirming around some kind of spiritual, religious type answer, that type thing. And it's never like well, this is how I feel. Because when I'm reading into this is I'm like, oh, she was jealous of him. You know what I'm saying? Like allegedly. But it just sounds like, okay, well, they probably wanted Tammy to go away because these people were all kind of fighting over Chad. Now, when Rose starts talking about the list of names and stuff like that Chad made for both Lori and Ro with people in their lives and the light to dark scale that people fell on and whatever and their past probations, Nancy's just like, and what's a probation? And so Ro explains to her, well, basically it's like another life here on Earth. It's real normal. And Nancy's like, hold up. I ain't never heard Christ talk about this mess. And Ro's like, there's like lost doctrines. And I was just like, oh, girl. No. Now, Julie talks about some other things where Chad basically was like, look, these plans of ours can't continue until our spouses are gone. Yeah. If you could get a bigger red flag and wave it around as hard as you can, it doesn't get any more obvious than this right here. Now, another interesting thing is Ro talks about a conversation that she allegedly had with Emma Daybell after Tammy passed, and that Emma was asking some questions, and essentially it was just like, well, Dad has been saying that, Mom's veil has been thinning. The veil is the other side. And, I mean, that's alarming to me. Now, during this, she also recounts the whole situation about the paint gun incident, the paintball, allegedly, and how essentially Chad just kind of explained that away. There was no sense of, okay, maybe I should be concerned about this. Also, this, of course, is all around the time where everything goes down south. So, I don't for 1 second think that that was a paint gun. You know what I'm saying? And I find it very bizarre that everything of this was so normalized that these things just didn't make someone completely freak out. Now, Ro talks about how Emma, through a third party was basically saying, look, Ro needs to stop talking about her family. Things are bad enough as it is. And I'm just like, oh, but the spotlight is way too good for that to happen. So then Nancy's like, so did you go to Tammy's funeral? And Ro was like, my angels told me that it was like a bad idea for my safety. Oh, but also I had a falling out with Chad, so I didn't go for that reason either. And again, that's where I'm just like, okay, so yeah, we're going with answer number 2 on that one. There's always this whole thing of like, well, here's a religious, answer for it. And then here's kind of what really happened. They don't want me there. Nancy's like, is it true that you've spoken with Tammy since her passing? And Ro's like, oh yeah, girl, like twice a week. Twice a week, a minimum. Then Ro says, Tammy came to me the day she passed and she was in good spirits. And I was like, oh my God. I was waiting to hear, da-dun-shh. And I'm just like, why would you? I was like, stop, y'all. We're getting trolled at this point. If it came out where like something was pulled away with like 100% evidence, like she wrote a tell-all that was like, I'm sorry, I was trolling y'all with all that stuff, I would almost have more respect for that at this point than these like elementary school puns that are being used. I'm just like, are you serious? Like, why would you even say that? Like, it doesn't even, what? It just sounds so in poor taste. But she's essentially like, look, you know what? They had a big party for her in Spirit Realm for Tammy, and she was visiting with her family, and no one really told her what happened to her. She didn't know, and it took several weeks for them to tell her. And rightfully, she was pissed when it happened at Chad and Lori and these people. And she says that once Tammy found this out in Spirit Realm, she came back and visited Ro and was like, no matter what the cost, you need to get this story out there. And I'm just like, okay. Now, Nancy finishes this off with a pretty obvious question. So in all these conversations, did Tammy tell you how she died? And of course it's, well, no, not directly. Of course, the visions stop shy of that, of any real answers. Now she starts crying at the end, allegedly. And she's like, I feel betrayed by Chad, and I know how his kids feel because, I was betrayed like that too. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, hold up. I'm like, so you're going to take a business relationship that you have with this man for a few years, whatever it was, and you're going to say that that betrayal is the equivalent of children's father, allegedly, possibly, murdering their mother and doing all this stuff. You're going to equate that on the same level. Okay. Then Nancy finishes this off with basically being like, did he ever hit on you? And she's like, yes, girl, yes. And apparently, allegedly, Chad pulled the whole same thing of, we've done the past life thing and all that. And she was basically just like, my husband picked up on that energy before I did. And, he wasn't happy about it. And she talks about how he did the same thing with Melanie Gibb. So again, this is where this all comes down to. I really get the vibe, and they say this in a lot of their words too, where they're like, these spiritual gifts, and that's where I'm like, what are you talking about? I can almost tell you that this is just a con artist. The fact that they still think that this psycho has spiritual gifts tells us all we need to know, that they are still drinking the Kool-Aid. So she talks to April, Lori's ex-friend in Kauai, Hawaii that she knew. And they were apparently very close. You know, Nancy's like, look, you know, what do you think of Lori now? And she's like, I don't even recognize her. It's not the Lori that I knew. Now, Nancy's like, what do you think of these beliefs, the zombie thing? And April's like, I've never even heard of this. Well, April goes on to talk about how Lori was saying that Charles had the demon living inside of him, Ned Snyder, and how Charles, you know, was already dead and this demon was basically just living in his carcass. And Nancy's like, well, how did Lori, like, know this? And April says that she told me that because the demon was shorter than Charles, that's how she knew, you know, that ain't Charles. And April's like, I thought she was having a nervous breakdown. I felt sorry for her. And April talks about, you know, the list that Lori had, the light and dark with names on it. And she's like, you know what, even my name was on there. And Nancy was like, I hope you were light. And April was like, yeah, I think I was. But she's like, I don't think I would be anymore. And again, April sees this for what it is. Now, y'all, April's a good example of somebody who, I mean, I might not have the same belief systems as she does or agree with her belief systems, and that's fine. Everyone's entitled to that. It's what makes the world go round. But she wasn't buying into this BS. When Lori came to her with this, she was like, girl, you know, you okay? You know, type thing. Now, remember, up until this, and I believe April's like, she was like, you know, this really invested mother. You know, she wasn't what I'm seeing. And because April, you know, pretty much, you know, just was kind of done with the whole situation and just, I'm laughing at it almost. You know, like, this is crazy. Like, these beliefs just don't even make sense. Like, I'm not joining your, you know, your group. I tend to believe what she has to say about the perception of what was going on more than some of these other people who were just as involved as Lori was. Now, April says that Lori talked about all these past lives that she led, and that they usually had some kind of connection to the founding fathers of the Mormon Church. You know, she said she was Joseph Smith's grandmother. She said that she was like the wife or daughter of James the Just, Jesus' brother. You know, and I'm just like, this is just such self-indulgent blasphemy. Now, April, too, was like, oh, no, I do not believe that Charles Vallow attacked Alex. You know, and on that, she's like, look, Charles Vallow had a ton of patience. He was not this, you know, I'm going to go attack people and flip out and all this kind of stuff. It wasn't him. She also says, I don't think Charles was cheating on Lori. You know, she says, if anything, Charles was in love with Lori to a fault. About the affair, April said, look, Lori can never provide concrete evidence. You know, she was like, and this makes sense. She's like, you know, if you found out someone was cheating, you're going to want to know, who is she? I mean, I get this. You're going to be like, what? Who is this girl? Lori couldn't provide anything like that. I mean, and her excuse, April said, for being like, I know he is when he would go out of town, his grocery bill was higher. And I'm just like, okay, I mean, here's the thing. They can't even keep a story together to make some alibi for their crazy assertions and beliefs. Now, April said that she really does think that Lori truly believes that she is like the chosen one and that she is completely delusional with that. And Nancy's like, how did you feel when, you know, Lori was telling you that she was a chosen one? And April's like, I thought she was having a mental breakdown. Honestly, I was embarrassed for her. And I mean, I get it. I'm just like, I would be too. I'd be like, okay. Yeah, because especially if your friend's going through all this stuff and it's like, you know what, let's talk this out, girl. You know, but at that point, none of this craziness had been connected or really 100% happened. So there's that. Now, April also says, look, Lori told me that I was part of the chosen ones of this 144,000. And that, you know, I needed to come on this mission, but that basically like my kids or whatever would have to go on a separate mission. They were not on the same mission. And again, you see all this, how it all lines up. They're wanting to separate from their families and kids, get the insurance money if possible, to fund this sick agenda. I appreciate April painting a more realistic version of what was taking place. I don't feel like I'm hearing from somebody who was in cohorts with all of these bizarre beliefs and whatnot. I feel like I was hearing somebody that they tried to get into that and that had enough mental stability, I don't know what you would call it, to say, no, this is the cray-cray train and I ain't a-going. Now click these videos if you want to see my other stuff on this case. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you later.